All right, everyone, welcome to our lesson for this week. We're going to look at an introduction kind of background to the First World War and see what conditions led to this global war. Okay, objectives and standards: to identify the conditions that led to the First World War and explain relationships between countries prior to the outbreak of war. And please take a look at the standards. All right, we have three vocabulary words for this lesson: militarism, triple alliance, and triple entente. So once you think about this, and please answer this in the think about this section, why are alliances formed between countries? We've talked about this for a couple of units now and throughout the course, but why are alliances formed between countries? What's the reason a country may form an alliance with another nation? And our essential question, what factors contributed to rising tensions in Europe? Okay, so remember that Europe was pretty much at peace in the early 1900s, and even prior to that in the late 1800s. But this peace will not last very long, as different factors are going to begin to take place. For one thing, nationalism was on the rise. We talked about nationalism before, where countries are, have a lot of pride in themselves and believe that they are the best country on earth, and each country is determined to rise above the other country. So countries began to argue over natural resources and materials, and they also began to dispute territorial claims. One of these areas that was very highly competitive was an area known as the Balkans, and we'll take a look at that during one of our live class lessons. But the Balkans were an area of different ethnic groups that was highly contested between different European powers. Another thing that caused some competition between European nations was colonialism and imperialism, which again we've talked about before too. So the race for colonies in Africa and around the world and expanding imperialism also led to disagreements between many different countries. So European nations grew mistrusting of each other, and they also began to grow their militaries and build up their weapon supplies, okay? Because they were becoming more distrustful of each other for different reasons, they began to grow their militaries. Many countries also thought it was important to be prepared for war. So this policy of showing military strength and building up weapons is known as militarism. So that's one of your vocab words, is militarism. I'm drawing an arrow here for you so you can kind of see it. So this growing mistrust of each other led to some countries creating alliances. So remember Otto von Bismarck, he was the Prussian who helped with German unification. We talked about him a little bit. He saw France as a threat to peace. So in 1879, Bismarck formed an alliance between Germany and Austria-Hungary. Austria-Hungary was one country at this time, so Germany and Austria-Hungary formed an alliance. A few years later, Italy is going to join the alliance, and this group is going to become known as the Triple Alliance. And one helpful way to remember what countries were in the Triple Alliance were, if you looked at this, the A for Triple Alliance, I always always has helped me as a student too. But the A could represent Austria-Hungary. Okay, so Triple Alliance, think of Austria-Hungary, and then just try to remember Germany and Italy. Okay, so that can kind of hopefully be a clue for you when you're trying to study things. Okay. So in 1890, Germany lets their alliance falter with Russia, or they let their alliance kind of fall apart with Russia. Russia responded by forming an alliance with France, because remember, Germany was trying to stop France and was trying to cause problems with France a little bit. So Russia responds by saying, hey, why don't we unite and form our own alliance? And this is going to alarm Germany, and they decide to build up their naval forces. And they were determined to be as strong as the naval forces of Great Britain. So, of course, in response to this, the British were afraid of the possibility of an equal naval power from Germany. Again, this mistrust of each other, this, just trying to build up your military. A lot of these different issues are causing problems in Europe in the early 1900s. So the British then agreed to sign an alliance, or an entente, with the French. In 1907, the British signed an alliance with Russia as well, and these countries will become known as the Triple Entente. And another way to remember this is if you look at the E, circle the E here for you. You can think of Great Britain as English too, so I always think Entente, England. So I always remember that the British were part of the Triple Entente with France and Russia. Okay. So again, just some clues and hints for you. Okay. So introduction to the First World War. So remember the various conditions such as militarism, nationalism, alliances, imperialism. All these things are going to just kind of start like a powder keg for World War I. All these different issues and conditions. They're going to cause conflict between nations. And remember that the Triple Alliance, which was Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy, are going to kind of, compete against the Triple Entente, which is the British, the French, and the Russians for power. Okay? All right, guys, well, that's all I have for today. So just make sure you do the think about this question again and respond to the other questions. Talk to you later.